The crash landing. Captain Ethan Cole was no stranger to danger. As one of the youngest test pilots in the intergalactic fleet, he had faced numerous challenges throughout his career, each one shaping him into a skilled navigator of the stars. Today was supposed to be another routine flight, a simple test of the new prototype spacecraft designed for deep space exploration. However, as he sat in the cockpit of the sleek vessel named the Horizon, something felt off. Ethan initiated the pre-launch checklist, his fingers flying over the holographic controls with practiced ease. All systems nominal, he muttered under his breath, trying to shake off the nagging feeling that had settled in his gut. He glanced at the digital readouts, everything appeared normal. With a deep breath, he engaged the engines. As the Horizon rocketed into space, Ethan felt exhilaration wash over him. Stars blurred into streaks of light outside his viewport as he ascended through layers of atmosphere. "This is Captain Cole beginning final approach for quantum jump test," he reported into his comms unit. "Copy that, Captain," came the reply from Mission Control. "Remember, this is a controlled test, no heroics." Ethan chuckled lightly at the reminder but couldn't resist pushing boundaries. "Would I ever do such a thing?" he quipped back playfully. "Your record speaks for itself," came the dry response from his superior officer. With a smirk on his face, he initiated the quantum drive sequence. Initiating quantum drive in 3, 2, 1. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the cockpit as warning lights erupted across his console. Ethan's heart raced as the Horizon spiraled uncontrollably through an unknown expanse of space. "Command. Do you copy? I'm encountering unexpected turbulence," he shouted into the comms unit, but static answered him instead. "Great," he muttered to himself as he wrestled with the controls, desperately trying to stabilize the ship. The craft shuddered violently as it broke through the atmosphere of an enormous planet below, a world painted in golden-orange deserts beneath a brilliant blue sky. With one final jolt, the Horizon crashed into the sandy terrain, carving a trench before coming to a halt amidst clouds of dust and debris. Disoriented but alive, Ethan took stock of his surroundings. The once pristine hull was now damaged and smoking. "Well, that's one way to make an entrance," he said dryly as he unbuckled himself from his seat and donned his environmental suit for protection against harsh elements outside. As he stepped out onto the blistering desert landscape, sweat dripped down his forehead. His handheld scanner beeped sporadically, indicating strange energy readings emanating from beyond a distant mountain range that loomed ominously on the horizon. With every step toward those mountains, Ethan felt both dread and curiosity gnawing at him. He glanced back at the horizon, half buried in sand, his lifeline now reduced to a wreckage site, and took a swig from his dwindling water supply. Note to self, he wheezed as fatigue began to set in, request hazard pay for unplanned planetary exploration. After what felt like hours of trekking through scorching heat and shifting sands, Ethan finally reached the summit of a mountain pass. The view below took his breath away. A vast lake shimmered in impossible shades of blue surrounded by towering palm trees and vibrant flowers that danced gently in an unseen breeze. Just as he was about to quench his thirst from this oasis-like paradise, a voice echoed in his mind, soft yet commanding, "I wouldn't drink so quickly if I were you. The water here can be intoxicating to newcomers." Startled by this mental intrusion, Ethan spun around only to find a tall figure standing gracefully at the edge of a flowering grove. Her skin shimmered with iridescent hues under sunlight while intricate patterns glowed faintly across her arms like living art. "I don't usually let strange voices invade my head on first encounters," he replied cautiously but with humor to mask his surprise. "And I don't usually let strange men drink from my lake without introducing themselves first," she countered playfully as she stepped closer. "I am Captain Ethan Cole," he introduced himself while becoming acutely aware of how disheveled he must look after such an ordeal. "I saw your arrival, most impressive," she said with genuine admiration sparkling in her eyes. "Most visitors who crash here don't survive." "Visitors? There are others." A shadow crossed her face momentarily before she continued. "I was like you once, an explorer myself," she said wistfully. "My ship encountered this barrier some cycles ago. This energy field tends to have that effect on advanced technology." Ethan ran a hand through his sweat-dampened hair in frustration. "So we're both stuck here." "Stuck is such a negative word," she replied with a smile that lit up her features. "I prefer to think of it as an extended vacation in paradise." He fought back a grin at her playful banter but couldn't shake off how captivating she was. Her confidence radiated like sunlight reflecting off water's surface. "Careful, a guy might think you're flirting with him," he teased back lightly. "Would that be so terrible?" she asked coyly while trailing her fingers across the water's surface as if beckoning him closer. Before they could delve deeper into conversation or flirtation, a sudden disturbance rippled beneath the lake's surface. Something large stirred within its depths. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more secure," she suggested urgently while grabbing his arm gently yet firmly. "Night falls quickly here," she added with urgency in her voice. "You'll want shelter before bioluminescent blooms begin." "What now?" Ethan asked incredulously as she led him toward a path winding through lush greenery into her grove. "I have a place nearby where we can discuss your damaged ship," she explained while glancing back at him over her shoulder with an inviting smile that promised adventure ahead amidst uncertainty that lay ahead for both of them on this strange new world. The encounter. As Ethan followed Lyra through the lush grove, he marveled at the vibrant flora surrounding him. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flowers, and the sounds of distant waterfalls created a soothing backdrop. He was still processing the surreal encounter with Lyra, whose presence felt both enchanting and disarming. A hidden sanctuary. Lyra led him to a small clearing where a modest dwelling constructed from natural materials stood nestled among the trees. Its walls were woven with living vines and adorned with luminescent flowers that glowed softly in the dimming light. "Welcome to my home," she said, gesturing for him to enter. Ethan stepped inside, feeling an unexpected sense of warmth and safety. The interior was cozy, filled with colorful cushions and various artifacts that hinted at Lyra's rich culture. She motioned for him to sit on a large cushion while she prepared something to drink. "What do you call this place?" Ethan asked, trying to make sense of his surroundings. "This is my sanctuary," Lyra replied, her voice melodic. "It is a place where I can connect with nature and my people." As she handed him a cup filled with a shimmering liquid, Ethan hesitated. "What is this?" "Just a drink to help you relax," she assured him with a smile. "Trust me, it's safe." Breaking down barriers. Ethan took a cautious sip, surprised by the refreshing taste that danced on his tongue, sweet yet earthy, like nothing he had ever experienced before. As he drank, he felt tension ease from his shoulders. "This is incredible," he admitted. Lyra sat across from him, her eyes sparkling as she watched him enjoy the drink. "I'm glad you like it. It's made from the fruits of this land." They exchanged stories over the next hour, each sharing tales of their worlds and experiences. Ethan spoke of Earth and his dreams of exploring the universe, while Lyra shared stories of her people, their struggles against harsh environments and their deep connection to nature. "Your people sound resilient," Lyra remarked thoughtfully. "I admire that about humans." Ethan felt a swell of pride at her words. "We've had our share of challenges, but we always find a way to adapt and overcome." A bond forms. As the conversation flowed effortlessly between them, Ethan found himself captivated not just by Lyra's beauty but also by her intelligence and strength. She challenged his perceptions of what it meant to be an explorer. Her understanding of her environment was profound. "How did you end up here?" Ethan asked curiously. "My ship was caught in the energy field too," she explained, her expression turning serious. "I've been stranded here for cycles, but I've learned to survive and thrive in this world." Ethan nodded in understanding. "It seems we have more in common than I thought." Lyra smiled knowingly, sensing the connection forming between them. "Perhaps we can help each other." The night approaches. As dusk settled over the landscape, bioluminescent plants began to glow around them, casting an ethereal light throughout the grove. Ethan felt an inexplicable pull toward Lyra. There was something about her that made him feel alive. "Night falls quickly here," Lyra warned gently as she glanced outside. "You'll want to stay close, strange creatures roam during the dark hours." Ethan's heart raced at the thought of facing unknown dangers in this alien world. "What kind of creatures?" "Some are harmless, others, not so much," she replied cryptically. Feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension, Ethan leaned closer to Lyra as they continued their conversation. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken words and possibilities. An unexpected revelation. Just as they were about to delve deeper into their thoughts, a loud rustling noise interrupted them from outside the grove. Both Ethan and Lyra exchanged worried glances. "What was that?" he asked, instinctively reaching for a makeshift weapon nearby, a sturdy branch. Lyra stood up gracefully, her posture alert yet calm. "Stay here," she instructed firmly. Before he could protest, she stepped outside into the dim light, her silhouette framed by glowing plants as she scanned their surroundings. Ethan's heart raced, he felt compelled to follow her despite her warning. Facing fears together. As he stepped out into the cool night air, he saw Lyra standing confidently at the edge of their sanctuary, peering into the darkness beyond. He could see tension in her muscles as if she were ready for anything. "Lyra," he called softly but firmly. She turned slightly toward him but kept her focus on whatever lurked in the shadows. "Stay back. We don't know what it is yet." Suddenly, a creature emerged from the underbrush, large and shadowy with glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness like twin stars. It growled lowly as it approached them cautiously. Ethan's instincts kicked in, he raised his branch defensively while Lyra remained still beside him. "What do we do?" he whispered urgently. "Trust me," she replied calmly as she stepped forward slightly, lowering herself to appear less threatening. A moment of connection. To Ethan's surprise, instead of attacking, the creature paused and sniffed the air between them. Lyra extended her hand slowly toward it, a gesture of peace, and after what felt like an eternity, it took a tentative step closer. Ethan watched in awe as Lyra communicated silently with the creature through soft sounds and gentle movements. It seemed to respond positively to her presence. After several tense moments, it turned away from them and vanished back into the shadows from which it came. "That was incredible!" Ethan exclaimed as relief washed over him. Lyra turned back toward him with a smile that lit up her face in the dim light. "You see, not all creatures are hostile if you approach them with respect." He nodded slowly, realizing how much he had yet to learn about this world, and about Lyra herself. A new understanding. As they returned inside their sanctuary together, Ethan felt a new bond forming between them, one built on mutual respect and shared experiences that transcended their differences. "You're remarkable," he said sincerely as they settled back onto their cushions. "And you are brave," she replied softly, her gaze locking onto his with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. In that moment, surrounded by bioluminescent beauty and under a sky filled with unfamiliar stars, Ethan realized that this unexpected journey could lead not only to survival but also to something far more profound, a connection that could challenge both their limits and redefine what they understood about each other's worlds. The night stretched on as they continued sharing stories, each word weaving threads between their hearts, while outside their sanctuary lay an uncharted world filled with mysteries waiting to be explored together. Understanding each other. A new day begins. As dawn broke over the alien landscape, the first rays of sunlight filtered through the vibrant foliage surrounding Lyra's sanctuary. Ethan stirred from his sleep, feeling surprisingly refreshed despite the uncertainty of his situation. He opened his eyes to find Lyra sitting nearby, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of morning light. She was meditating, her hands resting gracefully on her knees as she absorbed the tranquility of the moment. Ethan quietly observed her for a moment, captivated by her serene presence. The previous night's events replayed in his mind, their connection, the creature they had encountered, and the promise of adventure that lay ahead. He felt an inexplicable bond forming between them, one that transcended their differences. "Good morning, Captain," Lyra greeted him softly as she opened her eyes, a warm smile spreading across her face. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I expected," Ethan replied, returning her smile. "This place is magical." Sharing stories. After a simple breakfast of exotic fruits that Lyra had gathered from nearby trees, they settled down to talk. Ethan felt compelled to learn more about Lyra and her world. "So, what's it like living here?" he asked, genuinely curious. Lyra's expression turned thoughtful as she began to share her story. "I grew up in a village not far from here. My people have lived in harmony with this land for generations. We have learned to respect its rhythms and understand its secrets." Ethan listened intently as she described the beauty of her home, the lush forests, sparkling lakes, and the vibrant wildlife that thrived in their ecosystem. "But it hasn't always been easy," she continued, her tone shifting to one of concern. "We face threats from those who seek to exploit our resources and disrupt our way of life." "Like who?" Ethan inquired, intrigued by the challenges she faced. "There are factions from other planets who want to take what we have without regard for our people or our environment," Lyra explained. "They see our land as a resource rather than a home. A shared purpose." Ethan felt a surge of empathy for Lyra and her people. He understood all too well the consequences of unchecked ambition and exploitation. His own planet had faced similar struggles. "I want to help," he said earnestly. "I may be just one person, but I can assist you in defending your home." Lyra's eyes sparkled with appreciation at his offer. "Your willingness to help means more than you know," she replied. "But we must be careful, those who threaten us are powerful and cunning." Ethan nodded, determined to find a way to support her people. "What can we do?" he asked. "We need to gather information about their movements and plans," Lyra suggested thoughtfully. "If we can understand their strategies, we might be able to outsmart them." Planning their strategy. With a sense of purpose igniting within him, Ethan began brainstorming ideas with Lyra. They discussed ways to scout the area discreetly and gather intelligence without drawing attention to themselves. "I can use my skills as a pilot," Ethan proposed. "If I can repair my ship enough for short flights, I could survey the surrounding regions from above." Lyra considered this carefully before responding. "That could work, but we must also ensure you stay safe while doing so. There are creatures out there that are not friendly." "Then we'll have to plan carefully," Ethan replied with determination. They spent hours mapping out potential routes and discussing how they could communicate without being detected by any hostile forces lurking nearby. Building trust. As they worked together, Ethan felt his admiration for Lyra grow deeper. Her intelligence and resourcefulness inspired him. She was not just beautiful but also fiercely dedicated to protecting her home and people. "Thank you for trusting me with this," Ethan said sincerely during a break in their planning. Lyra smiled softly at him. "Trust is earned through actions and understanding," she replied. "And I believe we are beginning to build that trust together." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He was no longer just a stranded pilot, he was becoming part of something greater, a mission to protect a world that had welcomed him despite his unexpected arrival. A day of exploration. With their plans set in motion, Ethan and Lyra decided to explore the surrounding area together before nightfall approached again. They ventured into the lush forest beyond her sanctuary, eager to discover more about this alien world. As they walked side by side, Lyra pointed out various plants and animals along the way, each one holding significance in her culture. She explained how certain plants were used for healing while others were vital for sustenance. "Everything here has its place," she said passionately as they paused beneath a massive tree adorned with glowing flowers that illuminated their path. Ethan marveled at the beauty around him but also felt a pang of sadness knowing how easily such wonders could be destroyed by greed and exploitation. A moment of connection. As they continued their exploration, they stumbled upon a small clearing filled with vibrant flowers swaying gently in the breeze. The sight took Ethan's breath away. It was like stepping into a dream. "Let's take a moment," Lyra suggested softly as they stepped into the clearing. They sat down amidst the flowers, surrounded by nature's beauty and tranquility. Ethan turned to Lyra, wanting to express how much this experience meant to him. "I never imagined I would find myself here, on an alien planet, working alongside someone as remarkable as you," he said earnestly. Lyra looked at him with sincerity in her eyes. "And I never thought I would meet someone willing to fight for my home so quickly after arriving." In that moment, something shifted between them, a deeper understanding forged through shared experiences and mutual respect. Preparing for what lies ahead. As dusk began to settle once more over the horizon, casting hues of orange and purple across the sky, Ethan felt an undeniable sense of purpose wash over him. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead alongside Lyra. "We'll gather information tomorrow," he said firmly as they stood up from their resting place among the flowers. "Yes," Lyra agreed with determination shining in her eyes. "Together we will protect this land." With newfound resolve fueling their spirits, they made their way back toward Lyra's sanctuary under the glow of bioluminescent plants that illuminated their path, a reminder that even in darkness, there is always light waiting to guide them forward on this journey together. The hidden threat. A new mission. As dawn broke over the alien landscape, Captain Ethan Cole and Lyra stood at the edge of her sanctuary, contemplating their next steps. The previous day had been filled with exploration and connection, but now a sense of urgency hung in the air. They had learned enough about each other to realize that their fates were intertwined, and the looming threat to Lyra's people could not be ignored. "We need to gather more information about the factions threatening your home," Ethan said, determination lacing his voice. "If we can understand their movements, we can devise a plan to protect your village." Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "There are whispers of a powerful leader named Zarek who seeks to exploit the resources of this planet. His followers are ruthless, and they will stop at nothing to achieve their goals." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine at the mention of Zarek. "What do we know about him?" the villain revealed. Lyra took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and resolve. "Zarek is known for his cunning strategies and his ability to manipulate others. He has gathered a small army of mercenaries from various planets, promising them wealth and power in exchange for their loyalty." Ethan clenched his fists, anger bubbling within him. "We can't let him succeed. Your people deserve to live in peace." Lyra reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "We must be cautious. Zarek is dangerous, and he has eyes everywhere." "Then we'll have to be smarter than he is," Ethan replied, a spark of inspiration igniting within him. "Let's gather intel on his movements and find out when he plans to strike." Planning their approach. They spent the next few hours strategizing, poring over maps of the surrounding areas while discussing potential routes for scouting missions. Lyra shared stories of her encounters with Zarek's forces, detailing their tactics and methods. "I've seen them raid nearby villages," she explained, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "They take what they want without regard for anyone's life." Ethan felt his heart race as he listened to her stories. He knew they had to act quickly before Zarek could launch an attack on Lyra's village. "What if we set up a surveillance point?" Ethan suggested. "From there, we could monitor their movements without being detected." Lyra's eyes lit up at the idea. "That could work. There's a ridge overlooking one of their known camps not far from here. We could use it as our vantage point." Gathering supplies. With their plan in place, they gathered supplies for their mission, food, water, and tools that would aid them in their scouting efforts. Lyra showed Ethan how to identify edible plants and fruits that would sustain them during their journey. As they prepared to leave, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie growing between them. They were no longer just two individuals from different worlds, they were allies united by a common cause. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with determination. Ethan nodded firmly. Let's do this. The journey begins. They set out toward the ridge as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting warm light over the vibrant landscape. The journey was filled with laughter and moments of shared discovery as they navigated through lush forests and crossed sparkling streams. Ethan found himself captivated by Lyra's knowledge of her surroundings. She moved gracefully through the terrain, pointing out various plants and animals along the way. Did you know that these flowers bloom only at night? She asked as they passed a cluster of luminescent blooms swaying gently in the breeze. They're beautiful, Ethan replied, mesmerized by their glow. Lyra smiled at him, her eyes sparkling with joy. Nature here has its own rhythm, it's important to pay attention to it. Reaching the ridge. After several hours of trekking through dense foliage, they finally reached the ridge overlooking Zarek's camp. The view was breathtaking, a sprawling encampment filled with makeshift tents and flickering campfires surrounded by towering cliffs. Ethan crouched low beside Lyra as they surveyed the area from their hidden vantage point. This is perfect, he whispered, excitement coursing through him. They watched as figures moved about below, mercenaries training, others preparing supplies for what appeared to be an upcoming raid. Look! Lyra pointed toward a group gathered around a central fire where Zarek himself stood speaking animatedly to his followers. Ethan squinted through his binoculars at the imposing figure commanding attention among his men. Zarek was tall with dark features and an air of authority that demanded respect. He looks formidable, Ethan remarked quietly as he observed Zarek gesturing passionately while his followers nodded eagerly. He is, Lyra confirmed grimly. He knows how to manipulate people into following him. Gathering intel. For hours, they remained hidden on the ridge, taking notes on Zarek's movements and conversations with his men. They learned about supply routes and potential targets for raids, all crucial information that would help them devise a counter-strategy. This is invaluable, Ethan said excitedly as he scribbled down details in his notebook. If we can warn your village in time. We must act quickly, Lyra interrupted urgently as she peered through her own binoculars toward Zarek's camp. Suddenly, a commotion erupted below as one of Zarek's men shouted angrily at another. Ethan instinctively tensed up, tension crackled in the air like electricity. What's happening? He asked anxiously. I don't know, Lyra replied, her brow furrowing as she focused on the scene unfolding before them. A dangerous turn. Before they could process what was happening, Ethan heard raised voices followed by an explosion that rocked the ground beneath them. Dust and debris flew into the air as chaos erupted in Zarek's camp. What was that? Ethan exclaimed as he instinctively grabbed Lyra's arm. Something went wrong, she shouted back over the noise as figures began scrambling in every direction below them. Ethan felt adrenaline surge through him. This was their chance to gather more information amidst the chaos, but it also posed significant risks. We need to get closer, he urged Lyra despite knowing it was dangerous. No. We must stay hidden, she insisted firmly but with urgency in her voice. But Ethan was already moving forward, his instincts driving him toward action amidst uncertainty. He knew this could be an opportunity to gather crucial intel about Zarek's operations while chaos reigned below them. Into the fray. As they crept closer to the edge of the ridge overlooking Zarek's camp, Ethan's heart raced with anticipation mixed with fear. He was stepping into uncharted territory where danger lurked behind every corner. Be careful. Lyra whispered urgently as she followed closely behind him. They found themselves perched on a rocky outcrop just above where mercenaries were scrambling around trying to assess damage from whatever had caused the explosion, a perfect vantage point for gathering intel while remaining concealed from view. Ethan held his breath as he focused on Zarek's reaction amidst all this chaos. He needed answers about what was happening below them before it was too late. The plan in motion. The calm before the storm. As the chaos in Zarek's camp unfolded below, Ethan and Lyra remained hidden on the ridge, their hearts racing with adrenaline. The explosion had thrown the mercenaries into disarray, providing them with a unique opportunity to gather crucial information. Ethan peered through his binoculars, scanning the area for any signs of Zarek's movements. "Look over there," Lyra whispered, pointing toward a group of soldiers who were rushing to extinguish a fire caused by the blast. "They're distracted. This might be our chance to get closer." Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Let's move quickly and quietly. We need to find out what they're planning." Infiltrating the camp. With stealthy determination, Ethan and Lyra made their way down the rocky slope toward Zarek's camp. They navigated through the underbrush, careful to avoid making any noise that could draw attention to their presence. As they approached the perimeter of the camp, Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. "Stay low," he instructed, glancing at Lyra, who nodded in agreement. They crept along the edge of the camp, using tents and crates as cover. The sounds of shouting and confusion filled the air as mercenaries tried to regain control after the explosion. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He felt alive in this moment, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Gathering intelligence. Finding a vantage point behind a stack of crates, Ethan and Lyra crouched down to observe Zarek's camp more closely. They could see Zarek himself standing at the center of a group of his top lieutenants, his expression fierce as he barked orders. "Listen up!" Zarek shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We will not let this setback deter us. Prepare for an immediate counterattack. I want scouts sent out to locate those responsible for this explosion." Ethan exchanged worried glances with Lyra. "He's not backing down," he murmured. "No," Lyra replied grimly. "He'll come after us if he finds out we're here." A dangerous decision. Ethan weighed their options carefully. They had gathered valuable intel about Zarek's plans, but now they needed to decide how to act on it. "We should warn your village," he suggested urgently. "If Zarek is planning a counterattack, they need to be prepared." Lyra nodded thoughtfully but hesitated. "We can't just leave without knowing more about his forces. If we can gather additional information about their numbers and weapons, we'll have a better chance of defending my people." Ethan understood her concern but felt torn between gathering more intel and ensuring Lyra's village was safe. "What if we split up?" he proposed. "I can head back to warn your people while you stay here and gather more information." "No," Lyra said firmly, her eyes locking onto his with determination. "We stick together. We're stronger as a team." The enemy within. As they continued to observe Zarek's camp, Ethan noticed something unsettling. One of Zarek's lieutenants seemed uneasy, glancing around as if searching for something or someone. The lieutenant was tall with a scar running down his cheek, and Ethan could sense that he was not entirely loyal to Zarek. "What do you think he's looking for?" Ethan whispered. "I don't know," Lyra replied, her brow furrowing in concern. "But it could be an opportunity for us." Ethan watched as the lieutenant moved away from the group, heading toward a nearby tent that appeared less guarded than others. "If we can get close enough, maybe we can overhear something important," he suggested. Taking risks. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, Ethan and Lyra made their way toward the tent where the lieutenant had disappeared. They crept silently through the shadows, hearts pounding as they approached. "Listen," Ethan whispered as they crouched behind another stack of crates near the tent entrance. "If we hear anything useful, we need to be ready to move quickly." Lyra nodded in agreement, her eyes focused on the tent flap. After a few tense moments of silence, they heard muffled voices from inside, the lieutenant speaking urgently with another mercenary. "I don't trust Zarek anymore," the lieutenant said lowly. "He's reckless and will get us all killed if we follow him blindly." "Keep your voice down," the other mercenary hissed back. "You know what he'll do if he finds out you're questioning him." "I don't care," the lieutenant snapped back defiantly. "I'm not going to risk my life for his ambitions." Ethan exchanged glances with Lyra. This was exactly what they needed, a potential ally within Zarek's ranks. A new alliance. As they listened intently to the conversation unfolding inside the tent, Ethan felt hope flicker within him. If they could convince this lieutenant to join their cause or at least provide them with more information about Zarek's plans, it could turn the tide in favor of Lyra's people. Let's approach him after they finish talking, Ethan whispered softly to Lyra. Lyra nodded but looked apprehensive. What if he alerts Zarek? We'll have to take that risk, Ethan replied firmly. Just then, they heard footsteps approaching from inside the tent. It was time for them to act quickly before they were discovered. Making contact. As soon as the lieutenant stepped out of the tent, Ethan sprang into action, stepping forward from behind cover with Lyra right beside him. Wait! Ethan called out urgently. The lieutenant froze in surprise as he turned around to face them, eyes wide with shock at seeing two strangers standing there. Who are you? He demanded defensively. We're not here to hurt you, Ethan said quickly, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. We overheard your conversation inside. The lieutenant narrowed his eyes suspiciously but didn't move away from them yet. What do you want? We want to help you, Lyra interjected boldly. Zarek is planning an attack on my village, he must be stopped. Building trust. The lieutenant studied them both carefully before finally lowering his guard slightly. Why should I trust you? Because I've seen what Zarek is capable of, Ethan replied earnestly. He will betray anyone who stands in his way. Lyra added passionately, your loyalty may cost you your life if you continue following him blindly. Join us, together we can stop him. After a moment of tense silence filled with uncertainty, something shifted in the lieutenant's expression. He seemed torn between loyalty and self-preservation. All right, he said finally with a resigned sigh. I'll listen, but if this is some kind of trap. It's not, Ethan assured him quickly. We just want to save lives. Formulating a plan. With their new ally on board, they quickly huddled together behind cover again as they discussed their next steps. What do you know about Zarek's plans? Lyra asked urgently. The lieutenant glanced around cautiously before speaking in hushed tones. He intends to launch an attack at dawn tomorrow. He believes your village is weak and vulnerable after recent events. Ethan felt anger rise within him at Zarek's callousness but focused on formulating a plan instead. We need to warn your people immediately and prepare defenses before it's too late. I can help you get back safely, the lieutenant offered hesitantly but determinedly. Thank you, Lyra said gratefully as she looked at him with newfound respect. A race against time. With their plan set in motion and time running short, Ethan knew that every second counted. They had to reach Lyra's village before dawn arrived and Zarek's forces descended upon them. As they made their way back through the camp under cover of darkness with their new ally leading them safely away from danger zones filled with mercenaries still recovering from chaos earlier that day, Ethan felt hope blossoming within him once more. Perhaps together they could change fate for both humans and aliens alike. The journey back would be fraught with challenges ahead, but united against common threats, their resolve only grew stronger.